I am going to share some really fun ideas with you. Well, you can find the show notes at vintagehomeschoolmoms.com. Look for best homeschool planning tips. Well, what we tend to do is get laser focused on school and we forget we have a life. We are so excited that we have our books, our schedule laid out, that when the afternoon rolls around, we are freaked out because we don't have anything planned for dinner, right? Well, I know I've been like that as well. Well, the best advice I can give you about planning your school year is not to forget about the rest of your life, right? Okay, so I put things in order. You know how I like my lists. And so that's what I've done today is I've broken up this podcast into 3 of the best homeschooling planning tips that I can think of and that I have used through my many years of homeschooling. And then I'm going to break those down even further for all of you. So the first thing I want you to do is think about your life and kind of take time. I mean, if you can, stop this broadcast and make your list of your top things that are important in your life, and just think about all the things you're doing when you're not homeschooling. Go ahead and make that list. Well, I'm not going to stop and give you time to do that. So like I said, you can hit pause or, do this another time. But for me, the list looks something like this. God is at the top. So I have my prayer time. I have time with my husband, with my kids. I have, time for school when school is in session. I have meals that I have to get going, right, and feed my family. We have laundry to do. We have household chores, and I put household because that can consist of cleaning. And then I always keep laundry second because to me, that's a chore that I wish would do itself. So when they've invented throwing your clothes into a laundry basket and it comes out at the other end clean, I'll be the first in line to buy that. And then, of course, there's, doctor's visits that we have to do, visiting with friends. That's always a fun thing. And that can go under field trips when it's school time, right? So when we look at that list, we become overwhelmed when we have to add school to it because school, let's face it, takes up the majority of our day. If your kids are little, according to Florida law anyway, and it might be different where you are, there's a minimum of, I believe it's 4 hours, and then it goes up to 5 and then 6, or it actually could be 3, 4, and 5. I don't remember anymore because I haven't had little ones. But each area is different anyway. And so however many hours that is, doesn't necessarily mean you're at a desk, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're writing and working away the entire time. It can consist of a lot of different things because remember, when kids are in school, they're lining up, they're going to class, sometimes they're changing classes, they have PE, they have art and music, if their budgets allow, which is a wonderful thing about homeschooling because we can fit those in for a fraction of the cost. And so there's a lot going on in our lives when school is not part of the picture. And so whenever we start planning for our homeschooling, we forget that we've got the rest of our life that we still have to fit in. And I really think, friends, that's one of the reasons that we get overwhelmed. So consider that. Consider all of the things that you do on a daily basis. If you're really, really scheduled, then you can plan out all of the things that you typically do during the day. And just remember that you're going to be blocking out time when homeschooling rolls around. The second most important tip I can give you is to plan your entire year ahead of time. Yes, an entire year. When I finally realized that one little tip, I was so happy because I could do it the one time and then I could go back and tweak or add. Like, for example, some huge field trip came up that was going to involve oceanography, and it was one of those last-minute things that was thrown into a homeschool calendar by a friend of mine who organized it. We have this thing called the Mosey Marina. Mosey is the, I'm getting mixed up here, is a museum. But anyway, there was a marina that was close by, and they did a lot of moat. That's it. See, they both start with an M. Moat Marina, M-O-T-E. And so they did a lot of research there. And when that came up, we decided that we were going to move oceanography, which I actually had planned for the warmer months at the end of the school year, and we were going to move that way up to our fall months, which here in Florida is still warm. And so we were able to very easily switch out those studies because I had my year planned out. And so I wasn't having to find things mid-year. Yes, I've changed things. I have moved things around if they weren't working, and I've actually stopped books mid-year that were just not working out for our family. But because I had the entire year planned out, I could do that, and I didn't have to start from scratch with everything. So some of the things that I liked to do, for one thing, is I loved seasonal themes. And I think it was a throwback of being an elementary education teacher. That was actually my major. And I basically, when I did teach school, I taught middle school. But I love the seasonal themes, especially with younger kids, because you could do so many projects around those. And I really, really like projects for so many different reasons. One of the reasons I like projects is because it's a culmination of things that the children have learned. You can read books, you can do activities, let's say workbook sheets or, short passages that you're writing or even copy work. But when you do a project, you really have to understand that concept in order to create a final project. And so I think that's why I really like them. So I like to do seasonal themes. One year we were going to be visiting Georgia during the fall. So we studied a lot about the fall season so that we could go on our trip and then we could be, we were able to bring back some fall leaves. So that was wonderful. And then we also saved some dates in my planning. We planned breaks and we saved days for field trips as they came up. My daughter plans her Fridays as a day that she uses to either catch up or they play games, which is something that we always did when the kids were, all the way through. I even want to say almost all the way through high school. They played some learning games on Fridays just as a catch up. And whether that was doing flashcards, or things like that, it really helped. Back in the day, we used to use, computer programs. Now the kids have tablets that they can do some of their, work on and play some games on that are learning games. So, think about that. Have it in your schedule where you're going to plan a break or you're going to plan a field trip. I remember sometimes during the year planning 2 weeks where I was going to schedule, and then the kids could have projects that they were going to be doing in those 2 weeks. We could only do that when they were older and they were a little bit more self-directed. And then as I got better at planning, I didn't have to give us those 2-week breaks, which meant that we could tack those on and at the end of the year and stop sooner. My kids loved when they could be done with school in May and, way ahead of their friends that were in school. And even now with kids in college, May is still the date that they look forward to because that's when school ends. The other is in my planning, I plan time in my school schedule for family chores. So some days I started school a little bit later when we had bigger chores to do. And other times, like if it was a laundry day, and other times I scheduled us starting earlier because we were going to be breaking earlier. Do plan time for meal prep. you